This is 20 minutes of impact from the United States Energy Association Power Sector Podcast. I'm Herman K. Trabish. I've covered the power sector since 2006, and I currently report for Utility Dive. In this episode of the podcast, my guest is Jon M. Williams, Chair and CEO of battery energy storage systems provider Viridi. Jon's going to explain how Viridi has achieved an industry-leading level of safety for batteries designed for use where safety is vital, like densely populated locations, places with critical infrastructure. Jon's headed Viridi since 2009. Has seen the company from the time battery storage was called the holy grail of the power sector to a time when it's widely regarded as the power sector's savior. In 2024, Jon was named one of Ernst & Young's New York State Entrepreneurs of the Year. So, Jon, Viridi's distinguishing characteristic is its what it calls its fail-safe technology, which the company says has completed the industry's most rigorous safety testing. I want to know what makes it fail-safe. What rigorous safety tests has it passed? And what results show that the batteries are, your website says, the standard for safety in batteries. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, and Herman, like I just wanted to say, thanks for having me on. It's always fun to do these, and your podcast has a lot of viewers and a lot of following, and it's the best way for us to get our story out.
Great.
Um, so, so here's there's a lot of terms in battery testing that get thrown around, and
Mhm.
people use them generically, but they have very specific and kind of siloed standards. So 9540 is widely known as kind of a UL standard for a battery system. Are you 9540? And 9540 means that the pack system, the electronics, and the output has been reviewed by UL and deemed to be electronically competent, right? So the battery releases power, it goes through an inverter, the inverter puts it into an outlet, power comes out of the unit, and then in reverse, power comes back in through a charging process. Below 9540, you have what's called 9540A. And 9540A is the actual testing of the battery, right? So this is an 18650, right? Batteries go into modules, modules go into packs. So when you go into a UL lab to do 9540A testing, it is typically an observational test. So there's not technically a pass-fail. It's when the pack fails, what are the resulting gases, flames, heat, and secondary impact, right?
Mm.
So in 9540A, you force the pack into failure in the UL lab, and then UL measures how much gas did I get, how much flame, how much smoke, right? How did it impact the surrounding environment? And then that documentation becomes the standard for how your pack can be deployed.
Mm.
So a large scale grid storage system, the 9540 test will report that flames shoot 20 feet out of the roof of the container.
That's not good.
But that's a pass because it's observational, right? So
Mm.
all 9540A is doing is observing what happens in a failure.
Mm.
But under 9540A, there's a section called slab mount residential, which nobody tests to. Because in order to test to the 9540A slab mount residential, you have to cover your battery system with a cheesecloth. You have to put it within 1 inch of the surrounding structure. And you are not allowed to have any transfer of energy, either in the form of heat, smoke, or gas, when your pack goes into catastrophic failure.
Whole different ballgame there.
Whole different ballgame. And nobody tests to that section of 9540A because it means that you can't have any release outside of your pack. Well, that's what Viridi tests to.
Wow.
Okay. And we are the only pack that UL knows of, and they're a pretty broad organization, that has successfully gone into the lab and tested to that standard repeatedly. Like we haven't just done it once, we've done it a number of times. So because of that test criteria, we can go into an occupied structure without any additional fire suppression, construction, ventilation, or other secondary protections. Because if everything goes wrong in our pack, Nothing happens.
I've read that you use the term anti-propagation. It's something about the battery that shuts down. So if there's a sense of overheating, am I saying that right? And can you? I don't think there's a need to go in deeply into the chemistry, but just some sense of how you accomplish this shutdown.
So the good news, Herman, is I'm not a chemist. So we're not going to go through, I'm not going to get a whiteboard out and start going through chemical equations.
That's good.
And because I'm not a chemist, we solve this with material science because
Ah,
I am kind of a hack engineer. So what happens in battery failure is people kind of conflate these terms as well, right? They talk about thermal runaway and propagation. Well, thermal runaway is when one cell has a dead short and it heats up, and a result of that heat, it thermally runs away, right? So the thermal action inside the cell causes it to run away into a catastrophic failure. And when that cell runs away, it gets a 800 Celsius, it goes bang. Like it's
ah,
spectacular. Like it's a really significant failure. But when one cell lets go, the equivalent energy of one cell might be, like an M80, right? About a quarter stick of dynamite. That's about the equivalent energy of one cell. But
mhm,
there's typically 6,000 to 7,000 cells in a pack.
ah,
So when that one cell lets go and fails, it basically acts as an igniter for all the good energy around it. So
ah,
even though the cell right here was fine, this one made it go bang.
mhm.
So propagation is the chain reaction of the first cell failing and then igniting the energy that didn't fail all around it. So when you see a Tesla fire and it just keeps going, that's propagation, right? That's one cell lighting the next until 10 light 20, 20 light 50, 50 light 100. And, all of a sudden it's a fireworks show. So we stop that action at the first cell. We let the cell go into thermal runaway, but we don't allow that energy to transfer to the next cell.
Because of what the cell is made of, or what it's
No,
covered with.
because of the material that we put around the cell.
Uh,
So we basically take materials that absorb heat and energy and we place them strategically around the cells so that when one goes off, we're able to hold that energy for about 2 seconds, which is all you need, before it can transfer to the next cell.
Interesting.
And it's all passive, Herman. Like there's no electronics, there's nothing to maintain, there's no water systems. It is a passive material architecture.
And does the battery stop working when the one cell goes off, or does it
It's done.
keep functioning on the other cells?
No, it's done. Because
Oh, okay.
there are very sophisticated electronics that kick in, and the electronics will shut everything down before that cell lets go. But we expect the cell to fail, right? So
Mm,
we say, look, if all the electronics and all the sensors fail and the cell goes off, there can't be a secondary event.
got it. Okay, so let's talk about the use cases for these batteries, the Viridi batteries. Where have you deployed them? More importantly, I think in some ways, what is the cost for the Viridi battery energy storage systems in those use cases? I mean, is there a cost premium for that safety that you provide?
Well, so there's definitely a cost premium compared to a grid scale system, right? Because in a grid scale system, you really just stuff as many cells as you can in a can. But if you look at smaller systems like, the Tesla Powerwalls, the Generacs, we're very competitive. Like we are
Mm,
actually in most cases lower cost because we're actually manufactured in the US and our systems still are qualified for the ITC credit. So you get a 40% tax refund on every one of our systems it sells.
that 40% because of your domestic manufacturing adds on to the 30% ITC. Is that what you're
So
saying?
you get 30% plus you get the 10% because we're in a challenged an opportunity zone essentially in Buffalo.
And you said that it matches the cost of the Powerwall and so on, but it's more expensive than grid scale. What scale do you make your batteries? Are they the same scale as the Powerwall, or are they grid scale batteries?
So they're in between, right? That's
Ah,
That's the beauty of it. So we start with a 50 kilowatt hour pack, right? So our single pack is a 50. We put 3 packs into a string, which is 150, and then you can parallel those 150 strings. So we recently did an installation at a housing subsidized housing project in Buffalo. We put 3.75 megawatt hours in the basement of that building without any additional fire suppression or ventilation, permitted by the City of Buffalo Fire Department and approved by the city permit department. It's the largest indoor storage array in the country. Um,
Mm.
and it took that subsidized housing project from being an electrical customer whose bill was going up every 3 months. They now make money on the electric bill. They turn the electric bill into a profit center.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's really something with all the talk about affordability these days. I want to hear, about a couple more use cases, if you could, just to give us a sense of how it works. But before we go there, you mentioned you're in Buffalo, New York. For a long time there was, and I haven't kept up with this, Jon, but for a long time there was a problem with in New York City with building storage because fire department was extremely concerned about fire dangers. Have you worked in New York City? Have you been able to address that concern for the
So,
great guys of the FDNY?
so we are actively working with the FDNY on what's called a TM2 approval. And TM2 will allow our battery systems to be used anywhere in the city outside. So our mobile
Wow.
systems. And then we're going to go for TM1, which would be approval for our system to be used indoors. And Herman, part of the challenges, and this is, and I know I was late today and I apologize for that, but the reason I was excited to do the podcast is the misunderstanding of 9540A, right? So when fire departments look at 9540A, they expect to see a catastrophic release of energy. And they're trying to come up with ways to mitigate that. What nobody's done is gone to the most extreme test under 9540A and said, we can actually engineer around a catastrophic release, right? We're able to do that. And if you asked for that and just say to everyone, if you're going to be installed at, near, or in a building, you have to pass the slab mount residential test. That basically makes batteries safe overnight. So that's the message we're trying to get out, is that you can test to the most stringent standard under 9540A. We've proven it. We are not the smartest people in the world. I can promise you that. Okay. We're not launching rockets here. We're building packs in Buffalo. So there's no reason that the industry can't move to that type of an architecture. And then we don't argue about safety anymore, right? We're solving the problem and we're delivering a better product.
Can you bring the cost of that down to be
Oh yeah.
competitive?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's coming down now. Like
it's
as we're
just a matter
building
of
at scale, the numbers are coming way down.
good. Okay. You want to mention one or two more use cases before we move on, Jon?
So here's the thing. Our systems have been in the field for almost 5 years. Sunbelt Rentals, which is the nation's largest, or somewhere between the second and the largest equipment rental company in the nation. They have a large mobile energy group that does the Super Bowl and Burning Man festivals and golf tournaments and catastrophic storm events and everything else. So they have about 450 of our units running around the country every day. So we're literally everywhere. Like if I showed you a map of the US, you could point at a spot and I could show you a unit working today.
Interesting. That's a use case for real.
Yeah. And the thing is that the mobile units get beat up. Like they're getting drugged down the highway,
Yeah.
getting moved around with construction equipment. They're plugged in and unplugged every day. So the abuse they go through is a testament to how well engineered the product is. And literally, we've got units that have been in the field for 5 years, and I can pull them up on our remote tracking system and check software and progress and what they're doing, and they're running great.
And I would imagine that being out there in the desert locations of Burning Man would be quite a challenge for batteries too.
So
And
it
it
turns
sounds
out
like
I cannot confirm or deny that we were at Burning Man, but I can tell you that we powered a festival in the desert.
Here's a quick note from the sponsor of our series of podcasts about virtual power plants, Energy Hub. What if everyday devices had the potential to strengthen the grid when it's needed most? Energy Hub helps utilities turn that potential into dependable capacity by coordinating thermostats, EVs, batteries, and other devices so they work together as virtual power plants or VPPs that respond to grid needs in near real time. Energy Hub's latest white paper lays out a maturity model for VPPs that can be planned and dispatched with the same confidence as conventional plants while being 40 to 60% less expensive to build. That's why more than 160 utilities across North America partner with Energy Hub to manage over 2.5 million devices that provide 3.4 gigawatts of flexible capacity. Read the white paper and discover what VPPs can do for your grid at energyhub.com. Okay. All right. All right. Let's move on. You guys, because you mentioned being all across the country, you recently made a big acquisition. Moxion Power had a
Mhm.
production facility in Richmond, California, which perhaps not coincidentally was in the same location, I think, where the Moss Landing fire took place, which got a lot of attention, perhaps more attention than it deserved. Um, and you acquired that facility, and I think you're going to be making batteries there. And you got a $9.3 million grant from the California Energy Commission. How does that advance Viridi's growth, and how does it further the state of California goals? And was it partly in any way to address that over publicized Moss Landing fire?
So yeah, so I don't think Moss Landing kind of played into the equation. I think look at to California's credit, um, the California Energy Commission, the CEC, is headed up by a guy named David Hoffchild. Um, David
Very
is
smart guy.
a very capable guy, and you know, Herman, the thing about David is he is just he is just such a humble, active public servant. Um, he's tireless. I mean, and we were going through this process. You know, he's the chair of the CEC, which is arguably the largest state agency in the world.
Mm.
He's doing a $9 million grant to a small company. And I would talk to him at 8 o'clock at night if there was an issue with the paperwork, and he would pull in legal staff and say, I want them to get this fixed. Um, so he's just a very high functioning public servant, which you don't often
Yep.
get.
Right.
And I think to their credit, California, you know, they're the fourth largest economy in the world. If they don't solve energy, they don't run. Like it's not a choice for them. They have to solve the energy issue. And they aren't looking at, you know, I need to do a solar panel, or I need to do a wind farm, or I need to do a gas turbine. They're saying we need to do everything. And we need to make sure that if plan A, B, and C fail, D, E, and F are teed up. Um, so I think we were one of those letters. Probably not A, B, or C. But you
Well,
know, to their credit,
there's been a lot of emphasis in California on storage. California, Texas, and Arizona are the places that are building the most storage, and California was in the lead for a long time.
so we are going all in on behind the meter storage in Southern California right now. And we've got a number of projects teed up that'll install in the next 6 to 8 months. And I think David saw our platform as kind of that market area between, you know, a residential power wall that's 15 kilowatt hours and a grid scale system that's 300 megawatt hours, right?
That's what you're manufacturing at the Moxion Power facility.
So we're assembling product there. The packs are being manufactured in Buffalo. They go to California and they get built into energy systems. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I'm just gonna throw in my 2 cents worth. One of the things I've known David a long time, and I tremendous respect. What's interesting, and this is a complete aside, John, his father is a historian. He probably has a historical perspective that a lot of public servants lack. And I think that I'm all for historical perspective when you come to public service. But we're going to move on. You don't have to answer that unless you want to.
I do. I do. So here's the thing, Herman, is that and a really smart friend told me this when I was very young. He was much older than me. But you know, the difference between arrogance and intelligence is that intelligence has its limits. Okay. And when you have a public servant that's humble and incredibly smart, there's nobody more effective. Like, and David is a brilliant guy who, if you sat next to him at a bar in an airport, you could talk about a soccer game, and you would think he was a traveling sales guy. Like he's just a
All right. All right. We got to move on, Jon.
okay.
One more question. This is the last question. I want to get it in. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but let's deal with it at the length that it deserves. There's load growth and affordability challenges that are facing the power system now, and that they're going to continue facing the power system going forward. We don't know how much it is, but even if the data center demand doesn't materialize the way people think, there's still electrification, heat pumps, electric vehicles, they're all coming. And many people say that batteries are the quickest way to address both the load growth and affordability challenges. And I'm just wondering, I hear people all the time talking about what they need in terms of policy and technology advances. What does Viridi and other battery system developers, what do they need to take on these big challenges that we're facing?
So the first thing is we need to solve the issue of safety. Like for the public, we need to be able to tell the public these systems are safe, and if everything goes wrong, they will do no harm to you or your children. Okay, because we can't argue every time we go to put a battery in, and we shouldn't
Right.
argue, Herman. Right?
Yeah.
We should be smart enough to be able to deliver a safe product.
And that's been getting worse in
It's getting
recent
worse,
months and years.
but we can fix
People have
that.
got to understand this.
Yes.
This could be fixed. Yeah.
And the second thing I would like to put this into an analogy, right? And this is usually pretty good. And if it's not, tell me. Every day across the US, we generate, transmit, distribute, and deliver to the front of the meter. So we deliver to the front of the meter 10 units of energy. We buy 3. So we make, transmit, distribute, and deliver. We go through that entire effort and get 10 units of energy to the customer location, and the customer only pays for 3 through the meter.
Mm.
If I put storage behind the meter, I can take 3 to 7 or 8 overnight. I don't need any more generation. I don't need any more transmission. I don't need new poles. I don't need new wires. I don't even need a truck. I can drop a pack behind the meter, and I can double and maybe 2.5 times the amount of energy that customer can buy through the existing connection. Okay, that gives us a nice gap, right? A nice technology transition to get everything else we need to do. Because if I can double the amount of energy that's available today, just by installing a pack behind the meter, now you have 100% resiliency. You never lose power in an unexpected way. You double the amount of electrons you can buy through that meter, and all of your electrification issues can start getting installed. The only way we're going to transition off of fossil is if we replicate the storage we have on fossil. And our fossil system has storage at every point in the system.
Well, I've never heard it put quite so simply. And I suspect that there may be a few complications along the way, but I completely agree with you that this is the way to do it. I mean, one of the problems that I've frequently discussed on the podcast is that there is a peak period in every system. And in that peak period, that's where all the expense occurs. That's where all the new generation and new wires and new infrastructure gets built to meet that peak period. But if you put those batteries behind the meter, as you're describing, then customers can save that and use it from the battery instead of drawing it from the system during that peak period.
Okay, so Herman, listen, you just summed up our whole business right now. So I'm going to give you one more example if I have 30 seconds. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we met with the New York State ISO, which is, the independent system operator for all of New York State. And they said, John, look at your grade. We like you're in Buffalo, but you make 50 kilowatt hour packs. We buy power at gigawatt hours.
Mm,
Okay. I said, guys, look, there's 1.1 million commercial meters in New York State. They go, yeah, we know that. I said, okay. What if we did a pilot and I put 600 kilowatt hours, not a megawatt, 600 kilowatt hours on 10,000 commercial buildings? I said, it's less than 0.001% of all the meters in New York State. They go, okay, big deal. You're going to do 10,000 buildings, 600 kilowatt hours. I said, do any of you have a calculator? They go, yeah, we have phones. I said, all right, do the math. Herman, that's 6 gigawatt hours.
yeah,
That's 6 gigawatt hours of distributed storage. And because of our technology and our connection technology, I can hit a button and in 3 seconds, I can curtail 6 gigawatt hours off of the load.
right.
That's transformational, right? That
Yeah,
changes the
absolutely.
energy mix. And it's exactly what you just said, right?
Hmm.
We don't have to generate more. We just have to balance our use against what we're making. And we don't want to balance it by doing our laundry at 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
Right.
Like we want to
Yeah.
enjoy our lives.
And another thing, and we're going to have to close this out, John. I think we could talk about this a lot longer, but I just want to mention that what you just described, the commercial industrial sector is the slowest one to adopt storage. There's more storage at residences and on the grid, and that's an opportunity that's just waiting to happen. It's waiting for Jon M. Williams to come and take care of it. But that's all the time we have, John. I want to thank you. My guest has been Viridi Chair and CEO Jon M. Williams. He's been explaining how Viridi has proven and deployed its highly safe batteries where safety is vital, like densely populated locations and places with critical infrastructure, and how battery storage can be the savior of the power sector. I also want to thank my producer, Melissa Brown. And as always, I want to thank our listeners for taking the time to check out the USEA Power Sector Podcast. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, and share with everybody you know our quest for energy transition solutions.